we're looking forward at a world where AI is going to be the primary means by which we get answers. And with that being the case, if your business is built on Google, if your business is built on just Google Ads, you're going to be in trouble. And you need to build a known and trusted brand. That's what you're going to have to do. And the reason for that is because this idea of brand supersedes all the shifting sands that are happening with the platforms. The idea of trust is going to be fundamental to your business forever. That's not going to change. It's not going to go away.
Welcome to the Details Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Williams, Dan E. Williams, and today I have a guest who is coming back for a second time, Mr. Marcus Sheridan, the author of They Ask, You Answer, one of the coolest business books that I've put into my head since I started reading business books. So many cool things that detailers have implemented into their business, and it's really helped them thrive. Marcus, how are you doing today?
Yo, Dan. Happy to be here, buddy. Happy to have a chat. Part 2. Here we go. Lots is going on in the world.
It sure is, man. And you are a mover and shaker from selling pools all the way up to writing these books, and your program I've looked into as well for business coaching, and it's mighty beefy. Mighty beefy. I would like to get there one day and implement all of your strategies, actually.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. You know, it's interesting time, right? And a lot of people are nervous. And folks are, we're just seeing some interesting patterns too across the board. And so I want people to be prepared to handle this next wave of really what is, technology and changing buyer behavior, evolving buyer behavior, right? So that's my mission, is to help folks be prepared for that, so that they can, experience that financial prosperity that we all want.
Yeah. And again, I've implemented a lot of the things that you had in They Ask You Answer into your book. But what was the light bulb moment that was like, I have to write endless customers and keep this thing moving forward?
Well, in November of 2022, we had ChatGPT came out to the world, right? And as soon as that is released to the world, I said, oh, yeah, this is going to be very, very big deal. And, it's already starting to have a major effect. You're seeing a lot of companies are getting less website traffic now. You're seeing folks that, traditionally they've been very reliant on Google or Google Ads, and both Google Search, Google Ads, getting harder for a lot of people to experience those same results with. So that's been problematic. Buyers are more impatient than they've ever been. They demand answers. They want them. They want them now. They want it quickly. They don't want to have any friction during that, buying process. They're infovores. They consume a ton of information before they reach out to companies, and they want control of the process. They want to feel like they are in charge. And, I could go on, but we're looking forward at a world where AI is going to be the primary means by which we get answers. And with that being the case, if your business is built on Google, if your business is built on just Google Ads, you're going to be in trouble. And you need to build a known and trusted brand. That's what you're going to have to do. And the reason for that is because this idea of brand supersedes all the shifting sands that are happening with the platforms. The idea of trust is going to be fundamental to your business forever. That's not going to change. It's not going to go away. And so Facebook is going to go away. Instagram is going to go away. Google's going to go away. But I can assure you that your need to become a trusted brand is never going to go away as a business. And so if you want to be viable long term, you have to start doing things that are different than you've been doing the last 25 years if you're going to expect to get different results.
Yeah, amen. We spoke about AI the last time that we talked, and it was still newer then, and it was newer to me. Since then, I've implemented it in like every social media post. I mean, I've even found kind of hacks to work around it and include it in personal things in my life. It's just bananas. I'll be 56 years old tomorrow, and so I'm a little bit on the older side. But what I find is crazy. A lot of the young people, even these guys who own businesses, still haven't implemented it, and they don't know anything about it. And there's still so much misinformation, or maybe people are not using it correctly. And we spoke about, would Google be able to pick up that it's AI written and stuff? And your point was like, no, you can use this for everything. And I think that the more that you kind of dial it in and use the right prompts and ask the right questions, really does make it flavored just to you. But since you're on such a higher level, what do you notice about the amount of people who are implementing AI into their life? Because, like I say, I think that it's still almost an undiscovered, untapped resource.
Yeah, to be honest, sometimes Dan, you remember that scene from The Matrix when Neo, it's early in the movie, and Neo is looking around and he's like, there's just something's not right. Something is not right. And I feel like that's where we are to a degree with AI right now. It's like there's a group of people that realize this is going to change the world, and it's already changing their world. And it's making them, like you said, like you just mentioned, if you're using AI the right way, you feel like a superhuman right now. But if you're not using it, you're getting left behind. You really are with your business. And that's a scary thing. So you need to be thinking about how to integrate it into your personal life, into your professional life, certainly into your business. You need to use it as see yourself as like a multiplier. Like it can multiply your ability to do things, giving you back time as well. So yeah, man, most are asleep at the wheel, but it ain't gonna always be like that. And the ones that take advantage of the wave earlier are gonna ride a much better wave in the years that are coming up than those that are just so reactive to their competitors, because there's going to be a bunch of folks that are just going to be like, geez, what happened? I don't understand. How are they doing so much more than us? How is this company so much more productive than us? They got less people than us, but yet they're doing more. How is that? Well, it's AI.
All right. So you say that the trust deficits are really a big problem. And I see this also with, a lot of the guys that I do work with in coaching. And I'm always pushing them to put their face out there, be the person, the company, don't just show shiny cars or water repelling off of cars, but put your face in there and let the people get to know you to build that trust. And a lot of companies, they don't even look at the trust side as what the problem is. Maybe they're focused on they have to do more ads, or they have to work on SEO, or everybody always needs to get their website rebuilt, like instead of just, working on what's there. But what do you think the biggest mistake is that's making these people get stuck and not be able to move into where the trust is?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of that's a big question. Um, so there's the why are people stuck with AI, and there's why are people stuck with earning more trust online. On the AI side, there's a lot of folks that are sitting there saying to themselves, "Yeah, I think this is bad. I think it's the end of the world." Yada yada, right? And just speaking out of speculation or ignorance. Problem with that is this. Let's just be hypothetical. Let's say AI is the end of the world, and the end of the world is going to be 30 years from now. I don't know about you, but my goal is between now and then, my business crushes. I want it to do great. And if the end of the world comes, it comes, but daggone it, I can control right now what is within my control. I'm not going to control the end of the world, but I am going to control how I am using technology and how I'm improving my business. So that's the side of AI. And people just got to get out. They just got to get, I don't know what to say other than get with the program on that. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family to be aware of the world around you when it comes to doing better business. Now, the trust deficit that exists in the world today with buyers is the centerpiece of my new book, Endless Customers. And really, what it teaches is 4 pillars of becoming a known and trusted brand. If you want to become the most known and trusted brand in your market, there's 4 pillars that you need to be willing to follow. And I'm going to we can talk about them now. So pillar number one, and I actually did talk a lot about this in They Ask You Answer. It's going to, you're going to certainly resonate with you, Dan, but it's the willingness to say online what others aren't willing to say. Now, if you're listening to this right now, if you have a website, if you've got social media, etc., I'd ask you, what are you saying? What are you discussing that others in your space aren't willing to say, aren't willing to discuss? Let me give you a perfect example. I was with a group of attorneys just this week, and it was a 25 members of this attorney mastermind. And I said to them, how many of you on your website or online discuss what happens or answers the question, what happens if I lose my case? That is one of the fundamental questions that people have in that space. What happens if I lose? Guess how many attorneys address that? Even go there on their website? None, zero, nada. And so that's ignoring what the market wants. That's ignoring what your buyer wants. Now, if you read They Ask You Answer, you can recall there's 5 fundamental subjects that every buyer researches that they want to understand before they reach out to a company. We call these the big 5, and they're more relevant today than they've ever been. So what are the 5 subjects that every buyer wants to know, but businesses tend not to talk about? Number 1, they want to know how much is it. They've got cost, price questions about whatever it is, the product, the service, etc. They want to get a sense for budget, okay? Number 2, they want to understand what are the negatives, the problems with it, the issues, what could go wrong, like what happens if I lose my case. Number 3, they want to know how does this thing compare to this other thing that I'm looking at. People love to compare stuff online. Number 4, they're obsessed with reviews. Think about reviews. They don't just want the good reviews. They want the good, the bad, and the ugly reviews because they want to see how that particular company or brand handled things when they went south. And then finally, number 5, best, most, top. Think about how many times you've gone online and you research best plus another phrase. So cost, problems, comparisons, reviews, best. That is the big 5. And that's what buyers want to know. That's what they're researching. That's what you should be talking about online as a business. And that's what most companies are still not talking about, which, Dan, is a big mistake.
Okay. So in pillar number 1, say what others aren't willing to say. I push these guys. So many of the detailers want to not put their prices anywhere. And they're like, oh, but it's an expensive product for a ceramic coating and paint protection film. And I tell them, you're pre-qualifying the customer if they only have $100 and they're not going to click on something that's $1,500 because it's not even. And so you're so much closer to closing that out.
The problem, though, is this, Dan. You got to look at it like this. There's all the psychology that goes into this question. First off, when somebody knows they have a problem, a need, and they start to research a product or service, in the buyer's journey, literally the first question they have, like number 1, is, I need to know if I'm in the game. Like roughly, what's this going to cost me? That's the first question they have. This is why so many detailers that have ever answered the phone, person says, I'm not going to hold you to it, but can you give me a sense for what we're looking at? You see, folks want to know if they're in the game or not. Once they know they're in the game, they can continue with their research, and then they reach out to a company, and then they get a specific price. So the buyer's journey should, in a perfect world from a user experience perspective, should start and finish with conversations of pricing. Most folks still don't understand that to this day. Now, the other thing about it is if you're on a website and you're looking for cost and price as a buyer and you can't find it, you get frustrated and you don't sit there and say, I'm going to call them. You say, well, I'm going to look elsewhere. And if someone is saying, well, there's reasons, Marcus, we don't do it. Let's break down the reasons. First reason everybody says they can't talk about cost and price is they say, well, every job is different and it depends, which is fine. But if I was talking to anyone and I said, can you help me understand what drives the cost of your product or service up? They'd say yes. Can you help me understand the factors that drive it down? They'd say yes. If I said, can you help me understand how some quotes are higher in your industry than other quotes for the same service? They'd say yes. And so that's what you want to focus on. And then you can talk about, and here's roughly where our jobs fall, right? And so when you look at that, all of a sudden you're like, okay, so you've really explained value to the thing. So this whole idea of every job is different, it depends, that's an opportunity to help someone say, now I understand what value looks like in this industry. That's so helpful to me. Okay. So that's the first reason why we don't talk about it. It depends, but that's the number one reason why we should talk about it. We also don't talk about it because we say things like, well, our product or service is more expensive. I don't want to scare people away. What scares people away online, and you know this if you're listening to this, is it when someone educates you really well and teaches you well. It's when you can't find any information. It's when you're in a state of ignorance. You hate that. That's what's frustrating you. That's what frustrates you the most. And so ignorance is not bliss online. That's number two. And then the third reason we don't talk about costs and prices, we say things like, I don't want my competitors to see it. And the reality is, you probably have a pretty good sense as to what your competitors charge. They have a good sense as to what you charge. This is a big secret, non-secret. Everybody acts like nobody knows what everybody's charging. In reality, everybody's got a pretty decent sense as to what everybody else is charging. And again, besides that, when was the last time your competitors paid your bills? So don't base decisions on what your competition is or is not doing. So that there is the demystification of explaining cost and price online. You don't have to give your exact prices online. You do absolutely have to address the subject. And when you address the subject, that generates more trust. It allows people to know, hey, I'm in the game. And then if you really want to step it up, you can create a video that talks about pricing and explains everything. That's very powerful, which aligns with the second pillar, which the first pillar is say what others aren't willing to say. The second is, yes, please go ahead.
Before we get to the
Dan.
next one, I still have. So we talking about competitors and to say what other people aren't willing to say. But how do you ethically talk about your competitors when you really are going to want to say my business is better? This is why you would want to use me. And then we put a competitor in there, but we don't want to be like super negative and say, well, these guys just suck, so you wouldn't want to go there.
Sure.
They've had complaints and people hate them. How do you approach that talking about the competitors?
Yeah, you said, how do you talk about competitors ethically? You talk about competitors ethically by talking about them ethically. The way you do that is you take the words that they use about themselves on their own website and you repeat them. Let me give an example. I mentioned earlier that one of the big five is best. So I know one of the questions that people ask in certainly in the detailing space is, who are the best such and such detailers in pick an area, right? That's a very prolific search. It's an important search. That's one that people go to AI and ask about and they get a recommendation. That's one they go to Google for and they get recommendations. And so who's showing up for that? Well, you should produce an article and you should produce videos that go at this directly. I did this with my swimming pool company and literally it's made us $1 million in revenue, where we talked about in each major town where we do business, we would talk about, we would literally say, who are the best pool builders in this area? And we'd come up with a list and we would talk about each one of the vendors on the list. We wouldn't rank them per se, but we'd say, hey, here's the top 7. It's not in any particular order. And the words that we would say about them are essentially the words they would say about themselves. So we're not saying anything negative. The whole idea is that when people are searching for best, whatever, pool builders, best detailers, whatever, in your area, doesn't matter, that they are stumbling on this type of content. And this way too, you can teach AI, right? And you could come up with the systems like, okay, we've got a system here that we've created for the best detailers in our area. It's based on these factors, one of which is the number of Google reviews they have, another which is, such and such, website that ranks these folks. Another one is such and such. You can come up with any variables that you want, but now you can include yourself on that list as well. And so when people search that in AI, that is something that AI is going to see from you, and then they're going to make a recommendation for your company as well. So that's very, very powerful. I've done that technique multiple times already. Always be honest, yes. And but don't be afraid to talk about the competition because they're going to get their information from someone or something. They may as well get it from you. And your goal is to please 3 fundamental parties today. You got to please the buyer, the customer. You got to please Google, and you got to please AI. Now, the importance of Google is going to diminish over the course of time as the importance of AI goes up. But you need to do well with those. This again goes back to, got to have a known and trusted brand.
Okay. So, and then I just want one more before we move on to pillar number 2, for a specific. So, and at my company, we have a compliant warranty program. It's kind of one of the things that brought me over to this team. It's like backed, it follows the rules of the Federal Trade Commission, the Magnus-Moss Act of 1975. There's an insurance company behind it. And I know you're thinking, of course you do. That's what a warranty is. But it's kind of the wild, wild west, and maybe it's just semantics or whatever. But a lot of the warranties from other companies are guarantees, and not an actual compliant warranty. How do I, without coming across as kind of looking spiteful and bad myself, bring that up in the public realm to talk about
this is actually
why our warranty is more compliant?
It's a very, very good question. And I talk a lot about it in Endless Customers. There's a whole section on disruption. And I give different prompts for disruption. One of the prompts that I give, you really just mentioned, which is there anything about your industry that you don't agree with that you feel is wrong, inherently just wrong for the customer? Now, once you identify what those things are, then you should scream it from the mountaintops. Then you should produce content that says, here's the standard, here's the norm, but it's not right. Here's the reason why it's not right. Here's what you should do instead. Now, do you necessarily need to throw any companies underneath of a bus? No, but you should absolutely throw policies underneath of a bus, right? And so if there's bad semantics out there that trick people with warranties, I actually did this in the fiberglass swimming pool industry. So, where I started, Dan, with pools, the warranties were very misleading in that industry. I openly talked about them, and that forced some change within the semantics of warranties in the space. When we started with fiberglass pools in 2001, they were being built on sand. So essentially, like, you would dig a hole in the ground, you put a sand base beneath the pool shell, you backfill around it with sand, and then you fill it with water, and you pour concrete around it. Well, that's just stupid, because sand settles, sand washes. Heck, the Bible said 2,000 years ago, don't build on sand. So we made a big fuss out of this. We said, listen, you shouldn't build your pool on sand. Here's the reason why. Here's the inherent problems with it. At that time, this is 20 some years ago, 90% of companies were building on sand. Today, 90% of companies build on stone. And that's because we made this such a big deal in the industry. So should you do that? Yes. You don't need to throw any companies underneath the bus, but throw the process under the bus and throw it hard and step on it over and over again.
Okay. Got it. All right. Now we'll move on to pillar number 2. And this one's about on video. And one of the things that I'm a social media whore myself, and I put out a couple of short videos every day. I kind of approach it with like problem, solution, authority. I show what the problem is. I give a solution. Therefore, I'm the authority. And I really move everybody that I'm working with to do similar. A lot of guys have trouble getting in front of the camera. So it kind of goes back to a couple questions ago where we were talking about in front of the camera to build that trust with your face. And I think that's really huge important. Well, why do you believe that video is a must?
Well, I don't just believe it, I know it, because over 82% of all the time that we spend online is with video. Video is taking over the world. Of course, inherently, we all have known this for quite a while. I've been preaching it from the rooftops for quite some time. Yes, do some people say, video's not my thing? Yeah, but hey, there's a problem. You got in business. And when you got in business, you said it wasn't about you, it's about the customer. And so you lose the right at that point to say, well, I'm just not going to do video. Nobody has ever in the history of the world come to your website and said, I really wish I could see a video on this, but I bet you these people are just nervous on camera, so I'm going to give them a pass. See, that's not how it works. And besides that, you meet with people all the time. They are forced to see your face, to hear your voice, and interact with you. So what would you prefer? That they get a sense for who you are, what you sound like, what you look like, what you feel like before they meet you? Or do you want them to feel like they've met you after that first moment? My goal is always that they feel like they have a relationship with me before we've ever met. That is key. And so at this point, you can't just say we're going to do video either. You got to think like a media company. You have to say to yourself, listen, we're a media company. What we do is incredibly aesthetic. And we're an aesthetic industry. Everything is we're going to show, prolifically show. Not with just photography, with video. We're going to video every job. We're going to show how this works. We're going to show the before and afters. We're going to show the processes. We're going to show the skills. We're going to show the techniques. I'm going to show it to the world so they see that, hey, I'm an artist and I truly change the way things look, right? Like this is, if there's ever an industry that has to be media centric in terms of the way you think, it's this one here, Dan, right? So that's number two, show what others aren't willing to show. And there's a lot of videos that I mentioned in the book that are different types of videos that, of course, you can produce that go against the grain.
Okay. And here's what I find, that most of the people who are resistant is they haven't done it yet, and they feel so wonky putting that camera in front of them, and they kick back and they fight it, and then eventually they catch on to it, and then they're off and running. What do you have any suggestions for people who are running into that hurdle of like, just they can't get out of their own way because they're embarrassed or they don't feel right doing it at first?
Well, I'm not going to have any sympathy for that person because, again, you don't have sympathy when you can't find the videos. Your job is to meet the customer where they are. And so there are some techniques that we do teach to help folks. Let me just give you a couple. Most important technique of video is what we call the no stop rule, which is when you hit record, that you don't stop. No matter what happens, you don't stop. It's kind of like on this podcast right now, Dan. You and I are talking. I'm not going to stop suddenly and say, dude, I screwed that up. Let's start the whole thing over again. In fact, nobody listening to this has ever met with the prospect before, screwed up a phrase, a word, or what you're saying and said, you know what? Let's just start the whole thing over again. You've never done that. You keep going. So that same mentality that you carry when you're meeting with a customer, you need to have that on video. So that's the biggest rule, is the no stop rule. There's other rules too, but just one other one that I want to give you is just, listen, if it's good enough, publish it. Stop overanalyzing this. Give yourself some grace. In fact, the more imperfect it is, the more humanizing it often is as well. And so allow it to be imperfect. You're not freaking BMW here. We're not trying to create some brand that's like the most flawless looking brand in the history of the world. That's not what we're doing. That's not the goal whatsoever. And so that is one that I would strongly recommend to anybody that's listening, is if it's good enough, publish that thing, learn from it, see how your audience reacts to it, and watch its impact.
I really had to smile when you were saying that. I was at a training we did last weekend, and we were shooting some videos, me and the shop owner, and I had to do several kind of takes, but I was like, just don't stop it. And I just kept like restarting as it did it. And he was like, man, that was the most smart thing you've ever done. Like, I can't, he never thought of it. So, yes.
No
Yes,
stop
yes.
rule is a game changer. When you follow it like religiously, suddenly you just do videos in one take and you're like, son of a gun. That's awesome.
Yeah. And just one more that I want to throw in that's yours also. And the more we talk, the more I have taken away from your book. Holy crap. You used an example of the stories in the Bible, and like, so like if you see somebody else that you like their stuff, and just make it into your own words. Like you said, like if they, all three of the guys had written the story, where it's like, oh well, they
Yeah.
already wrote that. So
So yeah, this whole idea of it's already been done, so I shouldn't do it. Like that is the dumbest mindset in the history of the world, because otherwise we'd have one gospel and not four gospels, right? In the Bible. So it's like, you know, this is just one of those things where you have to realize you've got a perspective. It is special. It's yours. No one has that. No one can play you like you. And this also lends itself to actually what's the fourth pillar. The fourth pillar is just got to be more human than others are willing to be. Today, Dan, we care about the person more than the brand. So the personal brand is more important than the business brand. If I polled your listeners and I said, do you know who Kylie Jenner is? 90 something percent are going to say yes. If I said, do you know the name of her makeup line? A very large portion would say, I have no idea. And so that's the difference between a personal and professional brand. If I said to you, do you know who Elon Musk is? You're like, absolutely. If I said, do you know every single company that he is a part of? You'd say, I'm not totally sure. Or, you may or may not know. See, so personal brands make a very big difference. And so this is why you got to get to the point where people are that you see that they're developing a relationship with you that starts with you putting yourself in front of the camera and putting yourself out there to the world, getting over your inhibitions and recognizing that this is the new world. You're a part of it. You want to be successful in business. So you're now a media company. So show what others aren't willing to show and be more human than they're willing to be. And you're going to be more successful.
And that's what you mean in pillar 3 by sell in ways that others aren't willing to sell?
Let me give you, pillar 3, this is really fundamental. There's a stat that says 75% of all buyers would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. So what does this mean? Well, it doesn't mean we hate salespeople. It's just we don't want to talk to them until we're good and ready. And so how does this apply to your business? Well, it means you got to give buyers what is control through self-service tools on your website. So the most classic example of a self-service tool that everybody can do that allows you to sell differently is instead of someone having to talk to a salesperson to get an estimate, you instead have an estimator tool, a pricing estimator tool on your website. So, for example, if I went to anybody that's listening to this right now, name a service that a lot of the people do that's listening right now, Dan. Just name one. Just choose one.
Ceramic coating.
Ceramic coatings. Okay, so let's just go with the obvious one, ceramic coatings. Now, Dan, if I was going to build out this estimator, there's a series of questions I'm going to need to ask that potential customer so as to give them an estimate for their ceramic coating. What's an example of some of the questions that we would want to ask?
Is how old is the car?
How old is the car?
How long do you plan on keeping it?
How long do you plan on keeping it? What else?
What
Probably
color
size
it
of
is?
car,
Does it
model
live
of car,
inside? How long
color
do you
of
plan
car.
on keeping it?
Yeah. It's like all these things, right? All these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of that, you would say, well, based on that, without looking at the car directly, here's a range, Marcus. So could you do that on your website? 100%. This is why I started a software company and built a tool called PriceGuide.ai. PriceGuide.ai is the internet's fastest and easiest pricing estimator that you can install on your website in 30 minutes or less. And it works for any industry and it uses AI. And so what it does is you tell Price Guide, hey, this is the industry that I'm in. Then what it does is it basically uses the AI to help you build out a pricing estimator. You modify the questions to fit your business model, and you modify the amounts that are related to each question. And so you put in number variables, and what that does, it allows the tool, once the person goes through it, to get a price range, which is what everybody wants. Now you get the lead. So you're building your database. You have somebody that you can reach out to. They get what they want, which is a sense for pricing, not an exact quote, but a sense for pricing. Now everybody wins. Super dope, right? And so that's something that you're going to start to see all service-based businesses are going to start to have. Pricing estimators on their website. Price Guide is the fastest, cheapest, most effective way that you can do it. You can use it with AI. It's incredible. So make sure you check it out. PriceGuide.ai is the URL, but that's a game changer. Real quick on this too, Dan, what we see is this. The companies that put this tool on their homepage and really show it, and they use the phrase get instant estimate, generally see an increase of a 300% increase in the leads that they get. So in other words, if you're getting 3 leads a week right now from your website, if you add a pricing estimator to your homepage and make it very visible, you'll get 9 leads a week now. No brainer.
Okay. So now we're talking about having AI on there, but then pillar number 4 is to how can you be more human than the others are willing to be. but now we're talking about putting AI. And I notice a lot as, as we keep moving forward in technology, um, people have for their sales pipeline, it'll automatically send text messages that seem pretty real, sort of, but they're not. So how do we butt those two pieces up together of being more human than anybody else, but also implementing more of the AI?
Well, so the AI doesn't mean you're less human. Let me give you an example. And this is a technology I talk about digital humans in endless customers. And this is hard for a lot of people to swallow and even fathom. But imagine this, Dan. Imagine this year, you'll probably be able to come to my swimming pool website and you'll see someone in the corner and it looks like, let's say, me. And I say, welcome to the River Pools website. My name is Digital Marcus. I'm not the real Marcus Sheridan, but I'm using his brain to answer any of your questions right now. I've taken all of his articles and videos and I've put it inside here. And so now you and I can have a conversation. And here's how this works. You can ask me any question and I'll answer it for you. Or if you want, I could even give you an estimate for your swimming pool right now. Which would you prefer? Now, Dan, that's coming, dude. And a lot of people would say, that's crazy. Now, some people would say, well, that's not very human. Okay, what's more human? Somebody can read words on a web page, or they can talk to someone that looks like you, that sounds like you, that's using the content that you've produced as their essentially LLM, and now they're having a conversation with you. That's very, very, very human. It's a very human experience. Also, human just means remove fear, remove friction, make it faster. Remove fear, remove friction, make it faster. And so when you think about that, well, my swimming pool company, we follow what's called the 5-minute rule, which is within 5 minutes of anybody calling us, filling out a form on our site, we call them. And if it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, AI calls them and has great conversations with them. I have a software company that my entire, it's a super lean company. I have hundreds of customers with Price Guide. When you are using the help desk, you're using AI. The conversations that I see people having with AI is crazy. It's wild. They know they're talking with AI, but they're having a very good, positive experience. Just the other day, I had someone say, I love you, to my AI tool. I love you. That's human, dude, because they're getting their answers. They're getting them quickly. They're smiling. They're feeling good. That's a great experience.
Yeah. And less frustrating than the antiquated AI that is on the telephone when you call a company and you have to.
Yeah, and that wasn't
maybe I'm
AI.
just old, I
That
love
was just a
those.
train wreck. That was a train wreck. And, chatbots, the old style, that was a train wreck. You can't compare old automated voice, messaging solutions and old chatbot. When I say old, like 2 years ago, you can't compare that to today. We have leapt 100 years in the future. So get over that crap that we saw before, because that ain't what we're seeing now. I can assure you that.
All right. So I'm a Fix This Next certified business coach, but in the 4 pillars.
We love Michael Mikowicz, by the way. He is a good friend of mine, and he's a good dude, and he's a baller, and he's very, very funny. And I would say he's the best book reader ever. If you're listening to this and you haven't listened to his books on audio, he is far and away the best book reader. I'm so jealous of him because he does it so much better than I do as an author. And so, yeah, but Fix This Next. That's super cool that you do that, and good for your clients too.
Yeah. So if we look at the 4 pillars, how should businesses implement this, or when they look at it, where should they start? Where should they start in these? And maybe the answer is as simple as number one. But you tell
Start
me.
pillar number one. Write down all the questions that people are searching about your product or service. In fact, you could go to AI and say, I want you to use Marcus Sheridan's They Ask You Answer methodology in accordance to the big five. Here's the big five subjects: cost, problems, comparisons, reviews, best. Here's my industry. Tell me all the questions that people are searching online that are related to these five subjects. Name at least 75 or name at least 100. And you're going to get like 100 incredible titles that could be articles and videos. I want you to look at that list of 100, and then I want you to ask yourself, how many have you addressed? I mean, it's funny. The other day, I showed, for each one of the big five, I showed 15 to these attorneys. And I said, how many have you addressed? A lot of these folks thought they were doing well online, and most of them were 0 to 1 out of 15. Not good, but that's what we see. And so that's the first thing I would do. The opportunities are endless for you to really own these conversations online. And your competitors aren't going to do this. Just like there could be thousands of people listening to this over the course of time, Dan. 10 maybe are going to take action. Of those 10, 3 are going to do it really seriously. So I'm here for the 3.
Yeah, makes sense. You and you would think that they would get it, but they just don't.
We're humans, man. We're humans. We're resistant to change, baby.
All right. So what's one outdated marketing strategy that really just needs to die?
One outdated marketing strategy that needs to die. Man, I would say for most people that are listening to this, traditional outbound is the biggest waste of money on earth at this point. If you compare it to smarter digital marketing, like if you're doing radio, if you're doing just regular print, that stuff is as good as like it lasts for like 5 minutes, and then you're not getting any returns from it. Do something that's evergreen. Do something that's going to help you long term. You can produce a YouTube video today that makes you money for the next 5 years. Or you could go pay $5,000 to a radio person, and it'll last you till the end of the month, and then your pockets are empty and you got nothing to show for it. So yeah, traditional, you got to be careful about that.
On the They Ask You Answer side, I've tried multiple times in my private group with my installers to say, hey, what are the top 3 questions that customers ask you when they're calling? And for some reason, because I think this would be great to get all of their input on it to use that. But for some reason, they never understand the question and they never really seem to answer. So how do I ask so they can answer me properly, just so I can highlight this like one single point? I mean, if you already know they're going to ask you A, B, and C, you got to answer that before they even get to you.
I'd say, all right, guys, we're going to think exactly like our buyers for a second. If you, not knowing anything other than, hey, I want a ceramic coating for my vehicle. If you think this might be something that you want, tell me what exactly would be the questions you would have. Every single one of them is going to say price.
Yep.
Then they're going to say what could go wrong, problems. They're going to say, what is other people saying about it? Right? They're going to talk about the pros and cons. Like, these are the things that people want to know.
I think in my industry that the what could go wrong part, it really gets overlooked a lot. And then they just focus on shooting a hose onto the car and the water beating off, which is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. And it scares people away because they don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And that leads me right into what's like the one thing that really makes people lose trust.
Well, the biggest thing that makes people lose trust is when they can't find what they're looking for. That's the number one reason why people leave websites. The number one thing they're looking for is a sense for cost. That's it, y'all. And I know I've said it multiple times, but please stop living in the Stone Ages. Put a dang pricing estimator on your website today. Start generating more leads today. And you're going to see, oh my gosh, I wish I had done this like 3 years ago. And don't wait for your competitors to do it and therefore force you to do it, because then you're just a rule follower and everybody else is becoming the rule maker. And that's not a healthy place to be.
Another thing from your methodology that I've tried to push a lot of my detail shops that I work with into is having like everybody on staff produce some videos. Maybe, and it really it hit me because one of the shops here in San Diego, the owner was kind of mad because he noticed one of his employees liked another detail shop's content that was out, and he was liking it and following it. And that kind of made him mad, which made me circle right back to say, well, then, you've got this young man who's in his early 20s. He's kind of hip and knows what's going on. Like, why not just have that be part of his side work or his daily expectations? He's always got something in front of him that he can show the problem solution, thereby making you guys the authority. Um, I think what they get afraid of, the owners, when they want to get more content driven from their employees, is that if they have their employees doing that, they feel like they're going to lose a lot of productivity because they're going to dick around on their phone too much and not really be paying attention.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I just come from a place of buyers are going to get the information that they want. They might start off as ignorant, but they're going to become informed. And so my choice is always, are they going to learn the thing from me? Or are they going to learn the thing from somebody else? This is always the mindset. And if you're thinking really abundantly and you're coming from this place that's not a place of scarcity, you're going to say, why not? And by the way, the greatest rule for marketing in general is the golden rule. Market to them as you yourself would want to be marketed to. That's it. It's super basic. And so if I say to you, well, do you like it when people have video? Yes. If I say to you, do you like it when people give you a sense for pricing? Yes. If I said to you, would you appreciate it if they openly talked about their competitors in a non-negative way? Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Like all these things, dude. It's a no-brainer. Golden rule. Very simple.
When you were writing this book, what's like the one most surprising thing that you took away from it or that you learned in the process?
Well, I think I really learned that, it started off as They Ask Your Answer 3.0, and it became a book about how can you disrupt your industry and turn it on its head? Because that's what brands are going to have to be willing to do going forward. You asked about that earlier. If there's something that is not right about your industry, if there's something that could be done better, talk about it, set new standards, teach the world. I mean, the opportunities are there, but you got to be brave. You got to be strong. You got to be willing to disrupt. The rule makers become the rule breakers. Again, everybody else becomes the rule followers. So make sure you're the one that's breaking the rules and not being broken because of the new rules that you've been given.
And what do we got? Another month until this book is released?
Yeah, it's coming out in April, but you can pre-order it. Endlesscustomers.com is where you want to go. Endlesscustomers.com. I promise it'll be worth your time. It'll be worth your money. Trust me, it's not going to be a waste. A ton of practical information there. It's a beautiful system that you can follow for your sales and marketing for the foreseeable future, and it's going to have you more prepared for AI. There's a companion guide as well that you can get on our company website, with further courses and training, a lot of which is free. So, and we've set it up for you to have success in the years ahead. So when AI is taking over the world, you can be too, and you ain't got to be left behind, y'all.
Right. Right. So if is it coming out on audio at the same time?
Yes. In fact, I'm doing the audio recording next week.
Oh, awesome, 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 man. That's so cool. So okay, if people take away anything from this interview, like the one main thing that all of my listeners should take away from this interview, what is it?
You're a media company. Start acting like it. Everything you do is a story that you could show and you should show, and you need to become obsessed with that. Until you do that, you're not going to build an extraordinary brand that is eventually sellable, that allows you to experience financial peace for years to come.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, go ahead and one more time give me all of the information of where they can get this online estimate builder, your book when it's coming out, all of your information.
Endlesscustomers.com is where you get the book. Endlesscustomers.com. Again, got a bunch of freebies there that you get with it if you pre-order. And then you've got priceguide.ai. Put that on your website tonight. There's a 2-week trial that's free. You don't even have to put in any credit card information. So yeah, golden rule, like I said, That's how I like to be treated. So I'm going to treat my customers that way too. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a really dang good follow. So find me there, Marcus Sheridan on LinkedIn.
All right, that is so, so cool, and, I'm gonna admit I'm a fanboy. I was so excited, when, Nicole, sent me an email and said, "Would you like to interview Marcus Sheridan again?" I was like, "What? Are you kidding me?" So, super cool, man. I very, very much appreciate your time and your insights, and I look forward to your book coming out.
I appreciate you, brother. You be well, Dan. Your audience is lucky to have you. Thanks for the service that you're giving them.
Right on, and thank you.